What's up, you guys? I'm here to show you a tutorial on how I created this Ferris wheel. It's part of my pumpkin fair camp. This was a really fun one to make, but it was also very challenging. I do want to put a disclaimer on this tutorial. It's not this exact version. It took me a long time to figure out how to do this, and a lot of it was just messing around with things. Honestly, I scrapped it and redid it probably 16 times before I came out to this result. So you're going to see that with a lot of different camp builders. It's not uncommon to redo things a bunch of times when you're first figuring it out. Honestly, making a tutorial on it, I've been putting it off because it is so hard to recreate. I did come out with a somewhat better version though. It is slightly less budget friendly. So the only part of that is that all those benches that you see there in this version are free placed. Meaning I took tables and I stacked them up, put a camp module on there, and placed the bench down so that it's free floating and not anchored to anything. That does save on budget, but it makes it very, very difficult to be exact, and there is pretty much no micro adjusting. If you misplace it, you gotta try over again. So the version that I'm going to be showing you is going to be a lot less painful in that manner. It just will take up some more of your budget, so just something to keep in mind there, but the result's pretty much going to be the same. So first thing we're going to do, your camp module, you're going to need it for upward merging, so just make sure you have it in a space that you remember where it's at. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a little workspace here as well, and I'm going to get a drop merging section ready to go. So for the base here, it's just going to be a 2x2 concrete foundation. And this middle here is exactly the middle of the Ferris wheel. In order to get the frame under the light section, I'm using the industrial street lamp, and I'm just going to have them facing towards the center. And I'm going to merge these two lights into each other so that it looks like it's just one. There's no trick behind merging these. You literally just place and they'll merge on their own. As I move one, I try to move the other equally. Sometimes you might get lucky and, getting these placed in the center, and sometimes it's going to take you a little bit more time. So just stay patient, stick with it, and eventually you'll get it. Sometimes it doesn't want to place, and when that happens, maybe just change the angle you're at, and then for whatever reason it works then. Alright, now that we have that pretty well centered, we've got our frame here. So now that we've got that, we are going to create these little cappy circles here up top. So in order to get these wall items to float, I'm going to come here with a foot locker, and I'm going to stack them 7 high and then 3 across. What this is going to do is it's going to create a wall that I can place this down, and it's going to anchor to one of those footlockers. So now I just need to figure out which one it is. It looks like it's on this side somewhere, possibly. It's one of these. And I think it's this one right here. So yeah, sometimes you got to just do some messing around to find out which one it is. But the nice thing is now we've got a nice big wall piece, but with a really small low profile 4 item, and we're gonna raise merge it. What I'm gonna do real quick is I am gonna have to make a second one of these, so I'm gonna go ahead and get this one on here as well. And I'm gonna find that anchor point. Alright, now we've got our two different wall pieces. So what we're going to do here is take the camp module. Now for raise merging, all you have to do is take your 4 item and you place it on the module. If you put it towards the center, it's going to do more small incremental raises. If you take it on the edge here, it's going to do larger upward merge raises. The ultimate goal here is I'm going to take a floor mat and I'm going to drop this stash below the foundation level so that it's hidden. So let me show you how I'm doing that real quick. First thing I need to do is make sure that I'm not only at the height I want to be, but actually above it, because I have to account for the space needed to hide this stash as well. So this should be more than fine here. What I'm going to go ahead and do is take a floor mat, and now I have this locker anchored to it. So as you can see, in this case I actually want this to be facing upside down, so I'm going to use the back side. Now, in order to hide this stash box, I'm going to need to convert this to a garden tile, and it does have to be the concrete one. I have a video that kind of shows some different tricks you can do to hide things in there. I'll put a link in the description, but for this, just make sure you have a concrete garden tile, and then what we're going to do is when you place down the mat in the tile, do you see how it drops a little bit lower? When I replace it, it hides the mat completely. So not only does it do that, but for whatever reason, you can place drop merged items into that foundation when it's the garden tile there. So we're going to drop this stash below the floor mat, so now all of it is hidden in the foundation. And that's going to hide all of it while giving the illusion that that wall piece is anchored to this frame here. So the first thing I need to do is just make sure that I have it at the right height. I'm going to use the two eyes and the mouth and look at the center to kind of think of the center point that I want to have on here. So it does need some more drop merges. So now I've got it at the height I want. What I can do from here is just look at the angle that I'm currently at, because I want to make sure that that cappy is perpendicular to the frame. So I do need to scoot it, tilt it to the right, and then what I can do to know I'm up against the light post is when it turns red, it means that wall item's actually interacting or intersecting with it. So if I go just a little bit before, I should be lined up there. In this case, you can get a little bit too close, so I am going to adjust it. While I adjust it, it looks like I need to scoot a little bit over to the left again as well. So just be patient with it, and eventually you'll get yourself lined up where you'd like it to be. Alright, I'm pretty happy with that. So we've got our first frame. We're going to follow the same process here. The nice thing is that I don't have to worry as much about the height. On this one, we're just going to follow the same steps, and when we drop merge it, we're going to use this one as a reference to match its height. So let's do the same thing again, where we take this over to our module and raise it. I'm going to raise it just a little bit more for good measure. And then on this one, I don't want it to also be upside down. I want it to be facing this direction. Put it on top of our floor mat, make sure that it's anchored, and we're going to go ahead and drop it. Now, when we're checking the height, it's a small difference, but do just make sure that you're dropping it into the garden tile and not on the concrete here, because otherwise you're not going to be able to see if you're exactly the same height. But I'm going to go ahead and do that, and it's pretty obvious I need to drop it some more. We're real close. I think it's just going to be maybe 2, maybe 3 more drops to match it. I'm going to do 2. It's always easier to micro adjust doing a drop merge than it is to do a raise merge. So I prefer to take a little bit longer when I'm dropping it to make sure it's the right height. That looks pretty good. So what we can do is replace this with a garden tile over here, and we're going to do the same thing, get this lined up. Alright, that looks pretty good. So we've now... oh, looks like I need to scoot it back a little bit. There we go. Alright, so now what we're going to do is burn these 2 light posts, and we're going to take 2 conduits and place them at the center. That's what's really going to sell the idea of this Ferris wheel, is having all this wiring here. So what I'm going to do is go into FreeCam real quick here. And I like to use this Nuka-Cola power conduit. It's really low profile and just helps that wire stick out while hiding this item itself. I'm going to place it just inside of that frame right there on both sides. And what we're going to do essentially is you'll see down the road here, but we're going to have all of these benches here, and those conduits on the side of the bench are all going to attach to that center point. So now we've got our framework, and we just need to start working on the benches. This is a real tough thing to get a circle, especially when you're keeping conduits in mind. So I'm going to use walls as a little trick here. So I'm using the core vault walls. The reason for that is because it's a really nice grid line here, going, you know, with diagonal lines, with straight lines and everything. And I'm actually going to create a grid using this piece right here as the center. The nice thing is that it's pretty well lined up where this edge right here, the center point, is right here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and put 2 foundations on each side here so that I can extend my walls. And now I have a 4x4 grid to work with, and as you can see, that Ferris wheel center point is at the exact center of it. So what I want to keep in mind here is the lowest point of where a bench would be, and in this case I'd like it to be, for simplicity's sake, right here at the half wall height. So all I have to do is keep it symmetrical and match the half wall height up here. And then I'm going to do the same thing. Where it gets a little trickier now is thinking about that shape of a circle. It's not as straightforward as you would think. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and use the center point of these 4 walls to kind of start that line. But you'll notice if we try to connect those wires just doing this, it's not really going to sell the idea that it's a circle, especially keeping in mind that the conduit here on the top is going to be fighting against gravity. So it's not going to sell the idea that it's really a circle. Although if you look at the bottom, because it's working with gravity, it sells the idea more. So I want to keep this in mind and actually be really intentional with what conduits I use up here so that it can look as close to a circle as possible. In this case, I'm just going to kind of free place these to see how close I can make it a circle. I'm going to put another conduit between all of these 2 points. Now the nice thing is I can use this as a reference. So on this second from the top wall here, I just need to match it over here. So it goes right there. And then the same thing here. I'm going to match it to go right next to that little dot. On this one, and to be honest, I am just eyeballing it, and it's okay. It doesn't have to be super exact. It's going to be really tough to do that, but I'm going to go ahead and it looks like it should go right here. I'm going to match that on this side here. And we're just keeping it as symmetrical as possible. Now, I'm going to actually go one step further and put another between all of these again. So just remember, whatever I'm doing on the top, I'm matching on the bottom. It's going to keep that nice and symmetrical. What you'll notice is we don't have an exact circle. So, and that's okay, honestly. It's not going to be absolutely perfect, but we just want to try to hold a circular shape on it as best as we can. So, in some certain areas, you can see it's going to be slightly off, but that's okay. Alright, so now you can see the shape that's taking place here. We've got kind of a grid, and that's really helped us to get an idea of the shape that we want. And the nice thing is that we're going to keep these on here and use these as guides for where we're placing each one of those benches. What I want to really keep in mind is, again, the conduits on the top. So for this, I want to think about how many benches I'm going to have, right? You can give yourself more or less, but just remember, the more benches you have, the more it's going to give a circular shape. In this case, I don't want to do too many, so I'm just going to use the conduit that I have here to kind of get an idea of what the wiring's going to do. On the top here, I'm not really mad at that. That's pretty good there. So I'm going to leave maybe 2 benches here. Now, from here, I don't want to have every other. That'd be a lot of benches. So I'm actually going to skip 2 and go to the next. Skip 2 and go to the next. And finally, I can see the shape that's taking place here. I'm going to go ahead and remove all of these excess pieces. And I'm just going to micro adjust the ones that are attached to see what that wire is going to look like. This isn't too different from an artist when they draw a face. They start by drawing a circle and you know, some lines through the center to get the point of symmetry right. So we can see that we have a really nice circular shape on the bottom here. The conduit's doing the work for us. We're fighting it up top here. I don't want to terribly ruin the distance of these because it'd look really funky to have benches super far away and then super close on different sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these two up here, and I'm just going to adjust them a little bit. And that looks much more circular. The benches still don't look too far apart if you imagine, you know, benches being each one of these conduits here. I am gonna just micro adjust some of these over a little bit to keep them as even as possible. That looks pretty nice as far as a circular shape. So that is our frame of reference that we're gonna use for actually placing our benches. Okay, so next I'm going to get all my benches set up for this. So what we're going to do is the same trick that we did with the floor mat here. So we're going to use benches and floor mats to float the benches, right? I'm using this particular pew, and I'm going to take these same conduits and I'm going to place it on the sides here. I'm going to be placing this quite a bit, so just to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to go ahead and blueprint it, and I'm just going to title it something that would easily be at the front of my blueprint list. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and take a floor mat, and I don't want to place it in the center because remember, I'm going to have to use the garden tile to hide it. So if I place it in the center, I won't be able to hide the floor mat. It needs to be a little bit off to the side. And if you want to make your life even easier, what I would recommend doing is go ahead and blueprint with the floor mat already there as well. Now, what we're going to do is we're essentially going to take this floor mat and use it with the camp module to raise this pew, and we're going to have this conduit line up with this one, make another one, and line up the conduits each time as we go. So now all I have to do is just look at those two touch points, and you know, obviously I do need to drop merge it a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and make a pressure plate that's real close by here for easy drop merging. Alright, so now we're lined up on here. What I'm going to go ahead and do is just get my floor mat, and one thing that I didn't think about that I should have, because I mentioned it going this way, is the floor mat is going to intersect as I'm placing it this way as well. So don't do what I do. This is, you know, I like to show these moments in tutorials because we can always be learning more as we go. Alright, now we're lined up here, and what I'm going to do is I just want to get myself as centered as I possibly can. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look here. In my perpendicular, it looks like I need to rotate just a little bit over. And then am I in line with this? Because that conduit, we want that shape, right? So it looks like I need to scoot it back just a hair. And that looks pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and use our blueprint so that we have already got another one ready to go. And we're going to line up the height again. That one is so close. I'm going to go ahead and say that's good enough for me. And let's go ahead and look at our seats here. As much as we can, we're going to try to keep these as straight as possible. Make sure we're centered. I really like to look at it from this angle a little bit further, because it's really obvious now that it's rotated just a little bit the wrong direction. That looks much more straight. And now it looks like we just need to scoot it back to line up. So now we've got that lined up. We'll double check again to make sure we're not rotated. Looks like we can micro adjust a little bit to the right. That looks pretty good. So the only one that's going to be a little bit different is you've got these ones that are going past the foundation edges. So just keep in mind, use a really low profile item, something that's going to be hidden well in the ground. But as you can see, these formats get hidden. So now I've got floating bench pieces, and essentially you just are connecting them the same angle, or the same way that you're connecting these here, right? Alright, so initially I was thinking that you could put some conduits down and do the same trick where you raise merge everything. As I'm actually recording this, I'm deciding I want you guys to understand how to free place these, and you can do this same free place trick for all of these if you really want to save your budget. But I want to keep these foundations just a 2x2 because it's really going to sell the idea of the Ferris wheel having it stick up at these edge points here, going beyond the foundation. So we only have to actually do this trick with maybe 5 of these points. I think we can narrow it down to 4, and it's going to be this one, this one, this one, and this one here. So these 4, we're going to do free place benches. So let me go ahead and show you how I am approaching this. So first thing I want to do is use an item. In this case, I'm going to use the table. The reason for this is this particular modern kitchen table. I can place the camp module on it, and if I have it at the edge here, and I take that same seat, you can see that I can place it down. When I do that, I can move all the items, and this is how we're going to have these free placed. Just keep in mind that as you're placing it, you're going to have to keep adjusting, moving things around. It's going to be a little bit trickier on this side, but it's going to look so much cleaner. And I would rather teach you guys that than to, just give you half the effort. So what we're going to go ahead and do is see about the height that we're going to need to match the conduits. So on this one here, if you're following the exact points that I have, I'm using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tables. And then I have a feeling we're going to need to drop merge a little bit. So the reason I say that is because when we place the bench down, it's going to be slightly higher. And I'm going to go into free cam real quick for this, although I'm not a fan. And what you're going to see is the edge. Actually, that's pretty close. Oh, that's because it's on the table. Do you see it's a little too high? When we have those conduits on the side here, they're not quite lined up. It's slightly off there. But obviously, we need to drop merge this a little bit. So I'm just going to take this whole structure, and I'm going to start dropping it a little bit. I did, I think, 7 drops. And let's go ahead and test to see how that lines up now. So that height looks much closer. I'm pretty happy with that. All I have to do now, I've got the right height on here, so I just need to make sure that I'm lined up, you know, going this direction and with the conduit here. So now I'm just going to use the table to get as centered as possible here. I'm going to grab this camp module and just get kind of a feel for where the bench is placeable. It's not going to be placeable on every spot of the camp module, so keep in mind you're going to have to adjust this quite a bit. But I'm going to go ahead and place it down. Obviously it looks like I'm not straight, so I need to adjust this a little bit. And let's see. It's giving me a hard time. Again, the key is just stay patient. Be slow to do all your adjustments, and you know, you'll notice that it just comes out better in the long run. It looks pretty straight here, and I'm almost lined up. I need to go up just a little bit. Now, if I just move the camp module forward, there's not enough space for me to necessarily place down the pew every time. Just keep that in mind. It's much safer and easier to move the table instead back and create that extra space again. Now that didn't place on there. There we go. That looks much more lined up. Although I do need to adjust it a little bit over again. It's just staying patient, staying on it, being slow to put all these down, right? That looks pretty good. I'm going to scoot out of the way and see how I'm lined up. Now, it looks like I might be curving to the left. So I do need to scoot this over to the left. And this is where I say, you know, some micro adjusting takes place, right? Because this looks pretty well lined up, but what I am noticing now as I look at it is it's with the wire, it's scooting a little bit to the left here as well. So just be used to doing some micro adjusting on things. My cat just knocked over a box, if you heard anything. Alright, so that looks pretty good. I do recommend just, as you're going, place these wires down and just see how straight it looks to you. I also recommend not doing this at nighttime because it sure makes it harder to see these wires. But, say Livy. So I'm going to go ahead and place down these conduits on the side of the bench now. And we're just going to keep feeding this wire to see as we're going. Micro adjusting is going to be required, but just remember the micro adjusting on these free placed ones are going to be much more difficult than it is, you know, the other ones here that are anchored to a floor mat. So we're just going to do that same concept with all of these pieces. One thing I will say too, with tables being in the way, if you can think about it, start top to bottom, but you can work around this. So I'll show you how to do that since you're probably following this in the same timeline. All we're going to do is take our camp module, we'll move it back down there, Now, look, we have a nice curve going that's following the outline that we've already made. We're going to do the same thing with our tables here and see what that height needs to be to match this next one. It's looking like maybe 4 more tables for this next one up here. That looks pretty good. I think that when we place this pew down, I have a feeling we're going to need to drop this a little bit. Yeah, I can already tell that that's more lined up. I'm just going to place it down to make sure that... Oh, that's beautiful. Okay, so it looks like I don't need to drop anything on here. Now, I'm not going to be able to place the tables down because it's going to be in the way. So what I can do to bypass that pretty easily is I'm just going to take a smaller floor mat and I'm going to attach it to a larger floor. Perfect. So I'm gonna actually use this to place up there and hang over this bench. I can't just place the floor mat down on its own. It's too large a surface area. But what I can do is use this small floor mat, and that has a smaller surface area, so it's going to allow me to place this over top. Now I can work in the space above this bench. So I'm going to grab my camp module again. And we're going to take a look at this bench here to see how we can get this lined up. Perfect. So what I can tell pretty quickly is that I need to scoot over a little bit this direction. And if it's any easier too, you can start out by looking at the line here of the concrete to see that I'm straight on this way, and obviously I'm very much to the left. That looks much more straight, so that gives me an idea of where I need to be. Now, it's kind of hard to tell if this bench is straight because obviously all this stuff is in the way. So what I can do to bypass that is take a flamethrower trap and go ahead and just burn the table. That's going to remove the hitbox even when you're in build mode because now it's only detecting the one here. And I can much more easily see how I'm lined up. In this case, I want to actually put the conduits on, even though I'm going to have to redo it just to see how it's lined up. That conduit's a really good indication of how straight you are on your placement here. And it looks like I'm maybe slightly to the left, and I'm just going to place this one on this side to verify that. Yeah, so we are slightly to the left. I'm just going to adjust it a little bit. And I do have to get rid of these. This is why I'm not a fan of free places. It's harder for me to micro adjust like this. Looks like it's not going to move. So I'm going to take the candle and restart. Just make sure we're lined up this way. So it looks, as I'm looking at it, it looks like I need to rotate a little bit this way. And I think that's going to be closer, but let's let the wire do the talking for us. Alright, that looks much better. So it looks like we're pretty straight here. So just keep in mind, you can do this trick with every single one of these benches, but really just remember it's going to require more patience in general. It is more of an advanced technique. So if it's something that you're really getting impatient with, you can use this other trick with the floor mats here. If you really want to as well, I mean, you could put a conduit down here and do the easier method, but I do think that this version looks a lot cleaner. So we're going to make some magic happen and, you know, just follow these same steps with the rest of the conduits, and here's what it'll look like once you have them all placed down. So now we've done the tedious part of this build. All of the benches are now in place. We only had to free place 4, the 4 that I suspected. So worked out really well, and we are no longer in need of our gridline wall. So we can go ahead and break this down. Give yourself a pat on the back for being patient. That was the worst part of it, to be honest. From here, we can now remove all of our other foundations, and now you really see what I mean when I say that the Ferris wheel, the sides stick out, and it really just sells the idea of it, right? So we no longer need to have garden tiles down here either. We're going to hide all those floor mats underneath, and we've got our baseline structure. From here, it's really simple. All we're going to do is take a flamethrower trap, and we're going to break the light posts here. Hop into free cam, it might be easier, and we're just going to take every single one of these conduits on the bench piece and connect it to the center. Now, this is going to become more apparent when I was talking about the distance that the pews are. Do you see how it kind of curves into that center? And that's really what you want, to have a little bit of a angle on that wiring. Alright, and there you have it. Now you have your baseline, all of your structure really. Just repair your lamp posts, and you've got a completed Ferris wheel. And also keep in mind, if you want to make this a little bit smaller, the concept is all the same. Use the walls and make a, but I do think that this has a really nice shape to it, and if you look up here, you know, you are still fighting, of course, the gravity of the wiring, but it really sells that circular shape. So I hope this was helpful. You know, if you have any other tutorial requests as you see different things in my builds, just let me know. Someone saw this and said, hey, can you make a tutorial on it? And granted, it was like a month ago. I spent a lot of time not wanting to do this, but if I say I will, then I'm a man of my word, and I'll make it happen. So hope this was helpful, and hope you enjoy.